this thing on? Is it on? Are you ready? Hey, hello YouTube. Today we are going to talk about speed. Namely, Pinewood Derby car speed. We're going to talk about science. And mainly how to make a Pinewood Derby car fast. So let's get started. Alright, so I'm going to start out by telling you a little bit about my experience with Pinewood Derby. And then we'll take it from there on actual speed tips, how to build a fast car. So I got a quick little story. My daughter was involved in Awana Club. And they do Pinewood Derby racing as well, just like the Cub Scouts does. So my daughter has never lost a heat, never lost a race. She's won everything she ever entered with the Awana Club. At one of the races, the pastor of the church says, "Holy cow, what did you put in that thing?" And I looked at the pastor, smiled, and said, "Experience." So I am here today to share my experience with you all on building a fast Pinewood Derby car. I've got some hardware here as a sampling of some of what we've won in the past. But we're not here to brag about that. We're just going to talk about cars. So ultimately, I'm going to show you how to build a fast car. If you're watching this video, you've undoubtedly watched the Mark Rober video. It's excellent. It's got lots of speed tips, but I'm going to take that to a whole nother level of discussion of speed and speed tips and instruction on how to make a fast car. So, quick little introduction. I was a Cub Scout. I went through Cub Scouts, went through Boy Scouts, earned my Eagle Scout. When my son was age eligible to become a Tiger Scout, he joined Tigers. My daughter was always involved right alongside. She pretty much did everything that the Cub Scouts did. So he built the car, she built the car. And we've really learned along the way what works, how to be fast. You got to make a choice, though, when you're building a Pinewood Derby car. You've got style and you've got speed. And seldom do you actually get both. And you got to make a decision. Most packs are going to go for, they're going to have a category for looks. They're going to have your actual speed. And really, what matters most to you, what matters most to your child versus speed versus looking good. And we've gone both routes. And as far as I can ascertain, it is not possible to do both. A little evolution of cars we've got here. Here's an old car I built back in my day in Cub Scouts. By today's standards, this thing would probably be a last place car. I was proud of it back then. You can look at the bottom, the old school, how we used to put weight in. We would drill holes in the wood. My father had a smelting pot. We would melt lead from tire weights, and we would actually pour it into the Pinewood Derby car to give it weight. This car, I don't think it even weighs the proper amount. And it definitely would not be a winning car today. On the style front, son was a Tiger Cub. We built a fire engine. This thing is sweet. It looks really cool. There's weight on the back. We use that as like a hose. Those are actual tube weights. Was it fast? Nope. But it looked good. And that's what matters. Evolution of daughter's car. It's supposed to look like a NASCAR. Looks pretty cool. Was it terribly fast? Nope. Got a little more scientific. This is supposed to look like a NASCAR. Ended up looking like a pickup truck. It's got weight stacked in the back. It was a little bit faster. So let's move all that to the side. Now we got serious about speed. We went with kind of a modified wedge design. This car was pretty quick. It placed, I want to say second in the sibling class. It did pretty well. Next year, we went with some identical designs. We went with a flat style. So this wood is barely a 1/4 inch thick. We recessed out an area for the weights, got stick-in tire weights, and actually put them in there. So you've got one flat plate piece of wood here. This car was fast. This won the sibling class, or actually it was second place in the open class, second place to your old dad. And the boys' car, which has been cannibalized, it did well in his class as well. Here's the remains. My car got cannibalized, but from that year, I dominated the open class with a pretty innovative design. It was a wedge, got some clear plexiglass on top, and I actually filled it with BBs. So this was an illegal design until I modified it. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. And because we pretty much got a block of wood here, we're going to use this kind of as an example, as a teaching tool. Final year of Cub Scouts. This was all about the speed now. Well, actually, the boy, he built this whole car all by himself. He cut it out. It's about 1/4 inch thick, a little bit more than that maybe, and he wanted to fish. The weight is an actual jig. There's weight on the bottom hidden. There's a weight tube hidden here as a stripe on the side of the fish. The car, it's a really good looking car. It was pretty quick, but it wasn't the fastest car we built. Fast was these two cars. This was first place in the sibling class, first place in the parents/open class, and it was domination for both cars. We kicked butt. So I'm going to really go through teaching you how to build a car this fast. All right, so the big step when you get started building a Pinewood Derby car is you want to study your rules. If you don't study your rules, you're going to end up building an illegal car. You don't want to build an illegal car. The rules change from year to year. The rules can change from what organization you're in. If it's a Cub Scout race, if it's an AWANA race, if it's some other organization, you got to study your rules. There are weights that you have to hit. There's if you can do friction modification, if you can change the axles, if there's any shapes that you have to avoid, if moving parts. I built an illegal car. So the design of this car, it was a wedge, see a wedge, and then I hollowed it out with a Dremel tool, and I put a bunch of BBs in there to hit my actual weight. So the BBs were loose inside of here. I glued this plate down on top of it, and the BBs were loose inside of here, where the theory was that when it was at the top of the ramp, leaning down, the BBs would all be stacked up towards the front, and as it leveled out, the BBs would kind of roll and flatten out and spread the load. And so you had the potential energy and the kinetic energy and spreading out. So they were kind of stacked up high. I had the idea that the weights being higher would give me more potential energy. And as it went down the track and the BBs kind of spread out, then I would even my load out for my kinetic energy. So I built this. It was awesome. Then I did testing with it, and it was fast. I checked the rules. Turns out movable weight is illegal. Okay. So I ended up, rather than scrap the car, I had to modify it, drilled some holes in the bottom, let all the BBs fall to the back, and I just filled it with hot glue from the hot glue gun to keep all the BBs to the back so that they were no longer a movable weight. So the important part with that is follow your rules. Same thing as friction modifiers. One of our steps that we like to do is we use some tape. Turns out that our most recent Cub Scout rules, you were allowed to use friction modification on the side of your car. So it's a little tough to see here, but what we've got is some Teflon tape. So where the wheels contact the side of the car, we've got Teflon tape, and it makes the wheels, anytime they contact the car, they're touching Teflon versus touching painted wood, and the reduction in friction is fantastic. It makes a big difference. All right, another step, a stable car is a fast car. So you've got something, kind of cockeyed, the wheels are all jagged, it's not set up smooth to roll down the track, and it's wobbling all over the place. That's going to create friction. It's going to be a slow car. A stable car is a fast car. You want it to roll smooth. You want it to be even. You want it to not jiggity jag on down the track. You want it to really be a stable car. Okay, another thing when we're talking about building our car is if your rules allow it, you want your axles to be pushed out as far as you possibly can. Because to me, that makes it more stable. For example, if you had your axles right in the middle of the car and it's wanting to tip whichever way and it's not going to be stable at all. You push your axles as far out as you possibly can, you're going to have a much more stable car. So what we do for that, I've got a special tool. So when we're actually starting out our process, you're gonna start with a block of wood. We're gonna imagine that this used car is a block of wood. And before you start shaping it, before you do anything, what I like to do is mark where I'm gonna start my axles at. And usually you get your block of wood, it's already got some axle grooves built into it. You don't wanna use those. I'm gonna use the other side of the board, or the other side of the block, so that I can put in my own axle slots. Again, if this is against your rules, don't do it. But if it's within your rules, you definitely want to move your axles. So I've got this jig here. You can get these at different hobby stores or your hardware store, your Scout store. And what it does is it goes on your block. A little bit of a tight fit. It goes on the block. It's got an Allen wrench that puts a set screw and it tightens it down up against the block of wood. And then you're going to use a hacksaw. All right, so you're going to use a hacksaw to actually cut it. And the instructions call to put 2 blades on your hacksaw, and you want to put them in opposite directions so that it's going to cut in each direction. But the main thing is the thickness, is why they're asking you to do 2 blades instead of 1 blade. So what I like to do is I get my wheel, I take a wheel and I want to push it all the way to the edge of the car, to the edge of the block of wood, because the rules generally are going to say that you can't go past the block of wood. You can't extend out past it. So I want to find as close as I can possibly get. So I'm going to have my axle pushed through the wheel and I'm just going to make a mark in the block of wood. And after I make my mark, I'm going to do it at both ends of the block of wood so that my wheel doesn't extend past the front or the back of the car, but that it's as far out as it can possibly be. So I make my mark, I put my jig on, tighten down the set screw, and then it's as simple as using your hacksaw and just sawing it out. And you'll just saw it down as far as it can go until it starts hitting the aluminum of the jig. They also have drill style jigs if you want to drill holes instead of cut. This is a little bit cheaper, probably a little bit easier to use. It's kind of dummy proof. It's designed to fit the block of wood already. It comes with the set screw. Not much to it. I think most people probably have a hacksaw at home, so it's pretty easy to use. I don't know if the drill one might be a little bit more accurate. But anyway, so what you do, you made your cuts. So now you've got your axle slots, and that's kind of our very first step when we're going to build a fast car is making our axle slots. So after we got our axle slots already cut into the block, we're going to decide what kind of shape we're going to go with. Whether you want to go with a wedge, if you want to go with a flat, or else go a little more exotic. I don't know what you call this, maybe a bone, wishbone perhaps, something like that. But you got to decide what shape you want to use. And what I like to do is take a pen or a Sharpie, a marker of some kind, and just like to draw on my block the shape that I'm going to cut out. And I've really found that the best tool to make your shape, you could use saws, there's all different tools. You could use a Dremel, you could use it really whatever you want. But I like to involve the kids, of course, and this is their project. Ultimately, it's their car. They need to have a part in it, because if they're not having fun, if they're not enjoying the process, then you're failing. It's not the dad race, it's the kids race, whether it be AWANA, Pinewood Derby, Cub Scouts, it's all about the kids. So I found actually the easiest way for us to really make our cuts to our block and our modifications, we just use a belt sander. It's relatively safe for the children. It's got, mine's a variable speed. I can turn the speed way down if the kids are afraid of how fast it's turning. Worst case scenario, they're gonna scuff themselves a little bit. They can wear some work gloves, and it's relatively safe for the children. I've got a ceramic belt on here, really tough. You can hog through a block of pine like nothing. So it works really well. We've cut several of these pretty much only using a belt sander. Now, if you're gonna get a little fancier, something like this fish, we're still gonna hog it down the thickness with the belt sander. We're still gonna cut out some of our shapes with the belt sander, and then we might use a Dremel or something like that, a roto zip to make some of these scallops. But for the most part, it's gonna be done on the belt sander. So what I'm gonna do is start grinding it down, because my goal ultimately is I want my block of wood to weigh a ½ ounce, because the wheels and axles, all 4 wheels and all 4 axles together, they weigh a ½ ounce. I want my block of wood to weigh a ½ ounce, and then I'm gonna add 4 ounces of weight where I see fit. So you're looking for a goal, unless your rules are different, you're looking for a goal of 5 ounces. And I got a hard rule with this one, is my block of wood's gonna weigh a ½ ounce. You can't do anything about the wheels and axles. Those are gonna weigh a ½ ounce. So that's 1, and then 4 ounces of weight. So this particular car, it got ground out on the belt sander, got my thickness down. I was even able to cut out the radiuses on the belt sander, real easy. My daughter built this car. She did most of the shaping herself. Is it perfect? No. But is it good enough? Did it win? Darn right it did. So we got it cut out. Talk a little bit more about shape. So aerodynamics in a Pinewood Derby car, they probably pay a little bit. It makes a difference, but it's not a drastic difference. This isn't like a Formula One race car or some airplane. Do you want a block of wood going down the track? No. But aerodynamics probably don't make a huge difference. That being said, you want to give yourself a little bit of an advantage. Like, you want to cut the front to be sloped, of course. Now, one other trick that I did read about that we really haven't tested, and I think it's kind of an old school trick, is, I'll show on one of these other cars. The front of the car, it's got a cutout wedge on the underside of it. So I think on some of the old tracks, when they would lower the starting gate, I think maybe they didn't lower quite as fast as the modern ones. The modern ones are like instant, so I don't think it makes a big difference. But I think on the old tracks, that when they would lower, that the car would kind of roll along the starting gate. So if you had a cutout, you might get a millisecond, a little fraction of a second head start over a car next to you that was squared off, and he's got to wait till the gate clears the whole car before he can go. Where if yours has a cutout out of there, when the gate's coming down, you're getting a little bit of a head start. Does it make any difference on a modern track where it pops? Probably not. Does it hurt to cut a little cutout in there? Not one bit. It's a good idea. So we've got this one. We wanted to really hog it out to get it down to a ½ ounce. And you can see I even drilled holes in the frame to get the weight down even further to get my set weight that I'm looking for. Some people like to put fenders on, stuff like that. I've never experimented with fenders. Supposedly, it does make a difference in your aerodynamics. I'm not sure exactly how much. It makes the car kind of wide, and I like to keep everything kind of narrow down the middle on my car. So I've never really experimented with fenders. The last part of the discussion for this first segment is going to be, we've got our block of wood shaped. We did whatever shape we wanted to come up with, whether it's a fish, a pickup truck, fire truck, whatever we decided we wanted to come up with. We got our block of wood cut out. We know how much it weighs, and we know how much our wheels and axles weigh. So before we start fine tuning and moving on to other steps, we really want to have our block of wood pretty well decorated in our final state before we start moving on to other stuff. So you got all your different options. I kind of just enjoyed when I'm making the adult models to make them kind of cheesy and ugly and raw, and I get fun out of that. And I like to do stuff like write on the directions and just leave it as a block of wood. But you can go all out: stickers, paint, different paint schemes. We actually hydro dipped this car, spray painted, had filled a 5-gallon bucket with water and put spray paint on top of the water, and then dipped the car through it and lifted it back out. Made a hydro dip car. So you got a lot of different options, but it's nice to get it all decorated and have your block set before you move on to the next step. All right, thank you for watching part 1, and we'll be back with part 2 and keep talking about speed and Pinewood Derby cars. Thanks for watching. If you like our content, please give us a like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate you watching. Thank you.